This is a weapon that you do not have access to until you reach the end of the DLC. So we're going to jump or skip the path of the weapon acquisition that we usually have in these videos, because you quite literally get this weapon until the end of the DLC. However, that being said, I do have a couple of recommendations for this weapon. I know that it took me quite a while to make a build or a guide for this weapon. A lot of people had been requesting for it, and the ideal thing that I would like to advise for you at first is that, like, you could take this weapon and consider this weapon to be like the Golden Lie, or the actual weapon that you get from the final puppet, because like you could consider it as a New Game Plus weapon. But if you actually want to use it a little bit more on like taste, how it feels on the base game or the DLC, on the base game on itself, remember that you can get access to DLC once you reach the chapter 9 of the game. So my advice is that if, for example, you're doing a playthrough where you haven't finished the game, you haven't reached chapter 9, then as soon as you reach chapter 9, you can head over to the DLC area, complete the DLC area, and then enjoy the rest of the weapon for the rest of the 3 or 4 chapters that you still have available to you, that being said the 10th, 11th and 12th chapters. So you still have quite some time on the game to actually use the weapon on the base vanilla game. So when it comes to the weapon, like, the standout or the highlights of the weapon is actually going to be the Fable odds, and that's what people has been loving the most about this weapon. But I wouldn't actually neglect how powerful the base weapon on itself is, because the basic attacks, they have tracking like you have no idea. Like, even if you're far away from the enemy, you can close the distance with the enemy in quite literally no time, and if the enemy is moving too much, you will see that even while standing stationary right in here, P is actually going to be moving because he's actually trying to follow the enemy whenever he's in. The same happens for the heavy attacks, which the second one I like very much because it's like a 2 swing. So in a very fast succession of a heavy attacks, you can do 3 attacks, so that's something that you can be spamming as well. And you will see that the heavy attacks also have amazing tracking, and they make P move in the ground while stationary because he's actually trying to follow the enemy. Not only that, but the charge heavy attacks are very amazing. They have amazing tracking, and they're also going to close the distance even while you are on like really far away situations and scenarios from the enemy. Even the second one is just going to plunge you towards the enemy, and they are going to be dealing tremendous amounts of posture damage. But the highlight is going to be the Fable odds. So the basic of the Fable odd, you have this slash attack that is going to plunge you like a thrusting attack towards the enemy. It's very safe to use because it moves you to a different location, and you can actually follow this up 3 times. It's very easy to use, and take a look at that. My weapon is not even upgraded yet. Once you finish the assault, P is actually going to finish up with that very flashy attack, and that's going to be 4k damage with a weapon that is only upgraded to the 4th level. And remember that 1 level into these types of weapons, which are considered quote-unquote boss weapons. This is not a boss weapon, this is just a special weapon. But the damage increase that you get, it's higher than the base weapons. Like, for example, it would be very different than a +9 to a +10, which is you barely notice a difference. Here being 5 levels, they actually give you a huge amounts of damage. So that is nothing too shabby for the damage that you have right in there for a not fully upgraded weapon. That's one of the highest damages that you have on the full actual use of the Fable odd. And then you have this very cool and flashy attack, which I love. It deals more damage, much more damage, and it's ideally the one that you should be doing. But there's actually some kind of concessions that you need to have right in here with this specific attack. This is ideally also very safe to use because you will see that P disappears. He's moving like a maniac, like a devil right in there. While you are into this animation, then no one is going to be able to deal damage to you. This is also ideal to be used against large packs of enemies because it's AoE damage and it's going to trap them all in there. However, when you're fighting bosses, my advice is that you actually do consider, even while it deals less damage, this is also very much as safe to use as that one. But the reason why you would want to be using this is that usually when you use the basic one right in here that pins the enemies, the basic enemies is going to stun them, and it's actually going to pin them on the ground. If you're fighting a boss, the boss can still move away from that location, and that's going to waste 3 of your Fable slots. So if the boss that you're fighting, like, it's a very movable boss, it moves like too much, it's too fast, and it's always dancing around on the battlefield like Romeo, for example, or Lexatia, then at that time what you want to be using, it's just the basic Fable odds that has amazing tracking. It doesn't matter where do they move because you're going to look for them. When it comes to the amulets, I don't have like any specific recommendations that much. This is a weapon that I'm building towards a quality build, because the weapon has amazing scaling, either on strength or dexterity or motivity and technique, however you would want to call them. The ideal amulets that I always use is the Patience Amulet and the Carrier's Amulet +1, because this allows you to use the heavier possible armor that you have available in the game. And then as for the rest of everything, I'm using the one, you cannot get this until the DLC reduces the weapon durability consumption, just a little extra nice thing right in here. And then also the Red Fox Amulet, you do have to fight the Red Fox for this one, so it's probably a decision or concession that you going to want to make. But +3 for motivity and technique, since this is a quality build. We'll actually talk about a little bit in here about that. You can either be using the technique amulet or the strength amulet, depending on how is it that you're going to build this weapon. But to get the most advantage out of this weapon is going to be like a quality build. So this is going to be a weapon that's better used on high-level characters, because you will see right in here that if we go towards the handles, it has a B scaling on motivity and B scaling on technique. Remember that there is a soft cap right in here in this game, which happens at 40, which is ideally where you want to be investing into different stats. That is not to say that you cannot use this weapon with either motivity or technique, which you can. So if you want to, it's going to give you either A or A on either one of those stats. So if you're a motivity build, then you can actually allocate a motivity crank in here or a technique crank in here, which is going to give you the scaling for A depending on the stat that you are using. If you want to take the most advantage out of the weapon, you're going to want to make a very high level character with a quality build with no crank in it, because it's just going to give you B and B for both of the stats, meaning that you can invest 40 points into the damage stat of the scaling of the weapon without having to suffer any kind of penalties. And that's what, to some extent, going to force you to have a whole bunch of different stats in different locations. What a quality build means in Souls games is basically a weapon that scales either on 2 of the main stats, this being motivity and technique. So we want to reach, as you can see, I'm fairly high leveled in here, 111, and I still haven't reached. I'm also using the amulet. So if, for example, I were to remove the amulet right in here that gives me the motivity and technique, you will see that it's on 32 and 31. The ideal thing, if you're like on New Game Plus 1, 2, or 3, and so on and so forth, then ideally you would want to have 40 points into motivity and 40 points into technique. I like to have 25 vigor, that's like my sweet spot, ideally 20 if I can squeeze a little bit more. Vitality 30, because your pull sales are just going to be more than enough for you to have 30 vitality, for you to be able to heal the amount of damage that they have at this point. If you go to 40, I mean, like, you can, but you're still going to require for 2 pull cells for you to completely heal. So the sweet spot I consider for that to be 30. The most important thing at the end of the day, if you want to take the most advantage out of this weapon, is going to reach motivity and technique on 40 on either way. So if you're, like I mentioned, if you actually want to make this out of a motivity or technique individual build, you would add a crank and then place 40 points into motivity, 40 points into vitality, 30 into vigor, and 30 into capacity, so on and so forth. Remember that on New Game Plus's new stages of New Game Plus, armors tends to be heavy, so you would have to be investing a little bit more into capacity. And then finally, for the Legion arm, there's actually two that are going to shine the most. However, since you do have a whole bunch of scaling on motivity and technique, provided that you actually do manage to reach the 40 and 40 into motivity and technique, you can virtually use any Legion arm that you would want to use. But if you want to take the most advantage out of this build, it's going to be Aegis, because it has scaling for a quality build, motivity, and technique, and also Icarus, which I have already done a review about this Legion arm. I think that it is amazing, and there's some crazy combinations that you can have right in here. So like, for example, you can, let me actually show you something real fast and how much damage can you be dealing with Icarus right in here. So the ideal thing would be to throw as many, there's like many combinations that you can have in here, but we can completely charge our blades right in here and then use them all together and then immediately enter into here, and this is going to continually be dealing damage because the blades are still in there, and you can see how much damage can we deal right in there. So while there's like the fatal attack right in there and you have the blades, they are going to continuously deal damage while you're doing the actual fatal attack, and that's more damage that you can deal right in here. Those are just a couple of the combinations that I can think of right now with the Icarus, which is very powerful. Design wise, it's one of the most fitting weapons that I think that we have for this setting right in here, and it's also just a basic regular curved sword that you have right in here. But the amount of damage that this thing deals and the amount of versatility for build crafting, I think that this was just the cherry on the top of the game, like the final gift for gamers, because it doesn't, like I mentioned, if you actually build to you have like build character for motivity or technique, it's not that it's going to deter you away from not using the weapon, because it can still be used, it's still going to have nice scaling. It's just that if you want to have the ultimate highest damaging character, then you're going to want to be building a character that's a quality. That then again, a quality build character in Lies of P is very powerful, because you can basically virtually use any type of Legion arm that you would want to use, and your damage is just going to be tremendously amazing. If you like the content, a like and a super appreciated. No stole you today, you gorgeous, beautiful person. You are indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, join the Discord. Have a beautiful day and goodbye.